Hello and welcome to Comedy in a Nutshell, a podcast in which I, your host, Mark DeCano, ask the big questions about comedy. What is it? Who is it? And why is it? To help me, I've enlisted some of the experts in their field, comedians, promoters and fans, all of whom I confidently predict will be unable to answer any of these questions. If by a man's work shall ye know him, then ye shall know my guest this episode by his podcast, or most especially his blog, A Rich Comic Life. A man I once heard stand-up comedian Luke Kempner claim was more famous on the comedy circuit than a lot of the comedians. It's the other comedy nerd, Mr. Front Row, Richard Gill.
Hello, mate. How are you? It's good to see you.
Hello, mate.
How are you doing?
Really good.
Thank you so much for letting me be a guest on this. It's an honour.
The honour is mine.
I've got Edinburgh sorted out.
Yeah, I've got Edinburgh almost nailed down now.
It's only 40 shows this year.
Only 40?
Yeah. You're worse than I am. It's very good I'm on here, but you are worse than
Lazy
I am.
man.
I'd love to see your list.
It's about 49 at the moment.
Wow.
But it might go up.
And are you going the same time as I am?
Yeah, same week. Our paths will cross.
Yeah.
I'm mostly favouring shows on the PBH free fringe because I haven't got any money.
Yes, of course. If there's a train strike, I'm walking because the lineup is too good.
I want to kick straight in and talk to you about your blog because, as I say, you are famous among comedians for your blog.
Well, yeah. I mean, the whole idea of it was it started off as a spreadsheet. I am quite boring. I have a list of favorite films, a list of favorite bands, and I was producing all these lists, and one of them was comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I thought to myself, I could make something out of this, and then I thought, well, who's going to want to read it? But a friend of mine in my home city of Carlisle, she's got her own business, and she said to me, "This is crying out for a blog." And I didn't know what a blog was even, and I got the very basic rules.
Yeah.
I had a little, not a review. I've always said to people, I'm not a reviewer or a diarist or a critique. I'm a member of the audience when I go to comedy, and I've been watching comedy for now 47 years. So there's over 1,000 comedians on the blog, and it's just grown and grown and grown. It's been going for about 3 years. I've got over 100,000 hits on there now, which I'm delighted about.
Yeah.
And an offshoot of that was the podcast. It's called the whole project is called A Rich Comic Life because my name's Richard. Mm-hmm. So it's www.richcomiclife.blog, and there's A Rich Comic Life podcast. And the podcast, I was bowled over because I basically what it is, I talk on Zoom to comedians about their careers. And it started off with, I think I had about 3 of them. And one of them was Joe Caulfield, who was superb. One of them was Darren Walsh, and one of them was Sean James, who you well know.
Yep.
And I asked more and more and more, and I've currently got, as of the recording, there are now 64 hour-long interviews with the comedians, and I've recorded 94, and so they go out every week, and I update the blog every week with all my experiences of sitting there watching all the comedians, and it's just the best thing. I'm so passionate about it, like you are.
Yeah,
Mr. Comedy Nerd. my other comedy brother.
Yeah. Brothers in spreadsheets.
Yeah.
It was a delight to meet you finally last year, your reputation having preceded you.
Likewise, my friend.
I think what's bizarre is you bump into someone in a pub after a comedy show, and you say, "Oh, you're so-and-so," and yes, and you're so-and-so.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're best mates.
Yeah. Literally, you were known for years as the comedy nerd, which is no bad thing because it's purely on social media.
Yeah.
And then we finally get to meet, and it was great. It was lovely. Yeah, it's not just me who's doing this mad thing, wonderful thing. Yeah.
And since then, we bump into each other a lot, of course, because we go to the same gigs and same festivals.
Yeah.
And prolific as we both are, there's bound to be some crossover. So what I wanted to know is, when you're preparing your spreadsheets for the Edinburgh Festival, Hastings, Brighton, etc., how do you make a decision about what's right for you to go and see?
The whole point of the blog is to support new comedians as well as established acts. And I've been going to the Fringe. I've been very lucky to go for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of people come along with me at various times of the week. And I believe I'm very good at deciding what they like for comedy, because they come along with me to other comedy shows.
Yeah.
The Fringe is my holiday every year, so I go there for a week. 9 times out of 10, the spreadsheet, it takes me about 3 months to prepare, because everything has to be in the right order, in the right place, and grouped together, because Edinburgh is very hilly, for example, if it's the Edinburgh Fringe.
Yeah.
So I have new acts and I have established acts.
Yeah.
And I like, people seem to want to go to plays about comedians or things that they like. So for example, this year in 2022, the 3 that we're going to, there's a play about the TV show The Comedians. There's a play about Ken Dodd, and there's a play about Les Dawson. So that is right up my street, and I'm sure everybody else who's coming along with me has said yes, that would be great. So we're getting established acts like Frank Skinner's playing. Who else is playing? Jason Byrne's playing. Arthur Smith's playing, and we're getting new acts as well. I've never seen Bella Hull live, and I've never seen Brennan Reese live, and they're supposed to be superb. So a real mixture of quality acts, really.
I like the idea you've mentioned there about plays about comedians, because I wanted to ask you, we see each other a lot at stand-up gigs. Are you a core stand-up fan, or do you enjoy sketch comedy, improv, as well as obviously plays?
No, it's all gamuts of it. I love it. Behind me, I've got a load of books about. I love biographies, so I'm fascinated about what makes a stand-up comedian. On my interviews, I say a lot to the comedians that I had to go at stand-up myself once, which was at the Edinburgh Fringe.
Yes.
It's the most daunting thing, but if you can make somebody laugh, what's not to love? I mean, I love to go on a Saturday night, have a few drinks, and then sit down, and you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the magic of it.
Yeah.
And when I had to go, it was a disaster. Never say never again. I at the first year that I went, the people who ran the Free Fringe, they said to me, we can get you on a Monday afternoon in the Haymarket.
Yeah.
For an old folks gong show. So I had a script ready about being accident prone driving in Carlisle.
Yeah.
And I used to pass me. I used to have my when I passed my test. I used to cause lots of accidents. And I had all these stories, and he said, "Oh, this is really good." So I walked out, and there was 3 people in the crowd, and there was an old fella sitting in the back, and I walked out and I went, "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. People think I look like Eddie the Eagle Edwards, but I can't see the resemblance myself, and of course I'm his double." And I thought, what a killer line to open up. And the old fella at the back just went, "Fuck off, gun me off." And the promoter said, have another go. So I had another go, and same thing happened. And I thought, I think my place is in the crowd, laughing. And that's what I've done ever since. Never say never again. But I seem to have this legendary laugh that I should get insured, which is wonderful, really. That's my ammunition when I go, if you need any.
I have heard, I wish I could remember who it was. If you go out and you hear a particular laugh, you know Rich Gill's in, and then you know you're going to have a good night.
Well, the laugh came from let me tell you, the first ever act I saw was in the 70s, 1975, and it was Les Dawson.
Les Dawson, yeah, I was going to ask you about
that. With the family at Scarborough. And then a year later, I saw Tommy Cooper. And then I had a particularly memorable holiday in Torquay where we were in like a Fawlty Towers style hotel on the cliff. And before I'd gone, I'd be about 10 years old.
Yeah.
My diet was incredibly bad. I didn't really eat properly at all. And my mum and dad said to me, whatever's been put in front of you by the waiters or waitresses, eat it. So I discovered roast dinners and fantastic food. And because I'd done this, they got me a variety show, a comedy show. And it was Tom O'Connor at the Festival Theatre,
wow.
Pemberton. Right? Now, Tom O'Connor is a stand-up comedian from the 70s.
Yeah, he used to be on the Comedians.
He was on the Comedians, yeah. And we went along and he started doing his patter. And I can remember this vividly. I burst out laughing and it floored him. He walked off stage. He didn't know what to do. He walked off stage and then came back on and started again. And I thought, was that me? Is that me doing that? And it was. And I built it from there. Now the laugh, for years and years and years, I thought I've got something here with the laugh. So it didn't mind where I sat. And then because I'd been to the Fringe for so long, I was looking for a comedy club in London that reminded me of the Fringe venue.
Right. And
this is where always comedy comes into it. And it's very near where I live at Kennington. And I've been going there for the last 6 years. And the fact that James Gill is very warm with an audience. The second or third time I went there, I sat on the front row and that was it. The first ever show I had there, I think it was Josh Widdicombe. I was sitting halfway back and he recognized the laugh then. So I thought, well, I've definitely got something here. and what's not to love, you know? So people do recognize it, which is lovely.
Don't you have a story similarly with Julie Waters? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I'll show you. The photograph. I've got 3 prized photographs, and that's one with Julie Walters. There's one with Harry Hill, and there's one with Ronnie Corbett. And Julie Walters was signing her biography on the photograph. And the story was I went along to see Acorn Antiques, the musical, with a friend of mine. We were sitting on the front row. Yeah. And she was playing Mrs. Overall. And in the second act, when she walked on the second act, she hadn't appeared in the first act, and everybody went bananas when she appeared. And she started singing a song about Ozzy Osbourne and chocolate macaroons. So it set me off crying with laughter, and my laughter actually stopped the stage show. And everybody, they just stopped and they went, "Who is this?" And I was laughing away. And she leant over and she cheekily looked at me and she went, "You're really getting this, aren't you, sir?" So about a month later, the reason for the photograph, her book was out. And I told her this story and she's laughing away. And she's written in my book, "To Richard, many thanks for making me laugh. Julie Walters, best wishes." Which was great.
Wow, so, that's amazing. The thing is, like you say, you've been seeing comedy since you were a kid. It's amazing to me you even remember these. Like you've got anecdotes about a whole bunch of people, like Ed Gamble, Rick Mail.
Oh yeah, you can talk all night, my friend. Yeah,
a whole bunch of stories.
Yeah. Well, Rick Mail. I went to college in Stoke-on-Trent in the 80s, and just before I came down to London. So it was all the alternative comedy boom, and I hate the word alternative, but all the new comedians were emerging through.
Yeah.
And we saw Ben Elton at Stoke, and he did 3 hours. And what was fascinating about Ben Elton was he looked at his watch and tailor-made his material to the audience he was playing. So for at college, it was students. I saw him again in Carlisle, and it was all about money for some reason. I can't think why. And then within the space of, I think it was 3 weeks, we saw Ben Elton in Carlisle, and then we saw Rick Mail, who was obviously starring in the young ones that Ben Elton had written. It was big on the TV.
Yeah.
And he was supported by a comedian called Andy de la Tour, who had sort of like vanished off the scene, but he played a show in Edinburgh in 2018, 19, something like that.
Yeah.
And I told him this story because he did the support. And of course, dear old Rick Mail had passed on, but I've never seen such an opening to a show. He was playing the theme from the Muppet Show, and the theme from Dallas was on a loop, and it kept scratching and going back to the start and everything. And he was getting angry behind the curtains. And then all of a sudden, the stage exploded, and he jumped on, and then his trousers exploded. And he went, "Ladies and gentlemen of the Carl," he kept calling Carlisle the Carl, "I'm here." And everybody burst out laughing. There was one bloke next to me, whether it was a plant or not, it was brilliant. There was one bloke next to me, did not laugh, and literally jumped down and threw him out. And I've never seen anything quite like it. It's on a par with the first time I saw Harry Hill at King's Head about 30 years ago, and he's still to this day got the best opening line I've ever heard. He was late for the gig, and he brushed past me, and he climbed up onto the stage, and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry I'm late. I had to have a testicle brought down." And everybody laughed. And then he said, from Derby. and when I met him on the photograph there, I told him this. He said, "Oh, Rich," he said, I do this every time. But there's a classic example you were saying before about picking your comedians and who you're going to see in them. Another magical thing about the blog is watching them all grow.
Exactly.
So if you've got a brand new comedian, it's wonderful if you can catch them right at the start and then watch them all develop. So if you go to my podcast, there's many a comedian who you may never have heard of, but every one of them has got a good story to tell. And that's the magic of it. And Harry Hill is a case in point because he's come back from being a big comedy star on the television to play in the clubs again, because clearly he loves doing that sort of thing. And it's great to see, you know. So
let's talk about that briefly. The difference between television and live comedy. Obviously, recently we've had cause to not be able to go to see live comedy. And I know that you, like myself, have seen a lot of things online. Has there been any moments you've taken out of that where you think they've sort of seized the advantage, seized the opportunity, rather than just seeing the lack of live comedy as a disruption that it was? But was there also a blessing to be taken from it?
I think to start off with, you cannot beat live comedy. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
But if Zoom hadn't have happened, if the Zoom gigs hadn't have happened, I don't know what I would have done throughout lockdown.
Yeah.
It was so advantageous for many a comedy club who had the facilities to do it well. And so, for example, I know I mentioned Always Be Comedy before. They were very good at it, but so was the Monday Night Comedy Club with Sean James, Happy Mondays Comedy, and the Irish one with Charlotte Regan. I used to go on a Friday night. The Irishman Abroad Comedy Night, Return of the Crack it was.
That's it, yeah.
But I would also go to things like Boothby Graffo's nights, because he's a musical guitarist.
Yeah.
And because all comedy needs is just either a microphone or a guitar or a prop or whatever, you can get away and do it online. And he was drawing the crowds in. He was getting a lot of people into his shows. But you were saying before about television. I've also been to TV, lots of TV recordings as well, and radio recordings. I used to go to the Now Show and the News Quiz, and one of my favourite TV recordings was Have I Got News for You with Bruce Forsyth, which was just phenomenal. So the way that stand-up comedy works, you can do, if you can do it well online, but you can't beat a live atmosphere because you never know what's going to happen next, and it's of the moment and it's for you.
Yeah.
So, whenever you go and sit down, whenever I go and sit next to you, if we go and see an act or something, you never know what you're going to get. And that is why I fuel off my passion for loving it. And I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah. Well, as you know, I'm not a front row person. The one time I sat in the front row was because I was sat with you. You know what I'm going to say? We went to see North Down.
That's right.
Sat in the front row to see Lily Phillips, who I adore.
Yeah, she's lovely.
Cheers and applause. Lily comes out on stage. Straight away, I got a microphone in my face and I'm deer in headlights immediately. But you love all that, don't you?
Well, it was funny because I was talking about very story I was talking about before. Because they are human beings, no matter how big a star they are, and you learn this the more you sit in a particular place. If you're going to go there and laugh at them, what's not to love? In all honesty, all the comedians who've been on my blog, I'm not going to slag them off at all. One of the big decisions I made with the blog and the podcast was it's my brother's testimonial was, this is an enthuse and this is a whole new genre. I think I found a unique way of describing things. Now the argument is, you like everybody because you're so positive. But my argument is, no, they're getting up and they're having a go and they need support. If I'm there to support them, here we go. So there are many, many comedians, friends who I know, who wanted to go and have a go at doing stand-up comedy. And went to these wonderful free comedy nights to do the 5 minutes, and you have to bring your friend along and everything. And I was always the friend. So to start them off, I would be there literally for 10 shows. So I would get sick of the 5 minute routine, but I would still laugh, having heard it so many times. Now, a very good friend of mine who comes along to a lot of the comedy, as soon as he's heard something, he'll lean over to me and he'll go, I've heard this. Because if you look at the life cycle of, say, for example, you've got somebody like Hal Cruttenden or any of them on tour at Edinburgh. They will do their Edinburgh show, which is being honed, and then they'll spend the next year touring it, and then they have another show, and that's how it goes in the cycle, you see. So if I go and see Hal Cruttenden in Carlisle in, say, November or wherever, having seen him in August, it's the same show, but they're so good at what they do. I, for one, don't mind that, because there will always be something new in a show whenever you see them. They always put a new bit in, or, and that's the magic of it. And that's why I love doing it. It's, and of course, from my point of view, it's an ongoing thing. The blog, I can do it when I'm being wheelchaired around at 90. If you're going to wheelchair me to a gig, I'll go and write about it. But so there you go. Just going back to what we were saying earlier, I was invited to a half-day writing course, which I went on, and everybody else around me wanted to be a comedy reviewer. And the woman said to me, we can't remember why we invited you. I said, well, I'm not a diarist, I'm not a critique, I'm not a reviewer, I'm a member of the audience, I'm out to have a good time. And that answer, they never bothered me again, and that was, I thought, I've got something here. So, and it seems to be working, because folks seem to want me to keep writing it and try and keep interviewing comedians if I can get them. The only way I can get them is through the direct messaging on the social media. The one coup, I mean, a lot of them are coups, but the one that amazed me even was Barry Cryer. and I had to ring him up personally, which was unheard of. So I was this little nervous northerner ringing him up, and oh, hello, is that Richard? And it was the most wonderful person to interview, because he's got all the stories, because he's written for everybody. So it's gems like that it makes the life of the interviewer easy, because you get people like me just talking at them.
Shut up for 5 minutes so I can ask something.
Sorry, once I start.
Yeah, you make a good point, because you say that you're not a reviewer, but you're making a point of expressing your opinion about how these shows make you feel. Have you not thought about maybe deconstructing it more and making it a review?
I could go down a lot of avenues. I could do that. I could. A friend of mine reported for the paper at the Fringe one year, and was given a number of shows to go and see, and had reviewed them on. What it is, I suppose, is it is my review, if you want to really analyze it. But basically what I'm doing is I'm saying, here's a comedian, this is what happened to me when I was there. It's entirely up to you to decide to go and see them based on what I've written.
Okay.
So that's how I go about it. So I could do a lot of things. I want to try and do a live podcast. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether that will ever come about. I want to possibly do my own comedy night. I think a lot of comedians will be chomping at the bit.
Yeah.
But I say to myself, how on earth do you go about doing that? But then I thought to myself, well, how on earth do you write a blog or do a podcast? And here we are. So,
So with all that experience from the early days of seeing Les Dawson all the way up to now, from traditional comedy, set-up punchline to the fantastic narrative style of Dawson, all the way up to the alternative comedy scene and to today, how have you seen comedy changing? Is it for the better? Is it just different?
Yeah.
Where do you sit when you sort of say it's not the way it used to be, or it's better now than ever? How do you feel?
No, I think we're at one of the most exciting times, because so many people are fearless now to have a go at it. There was no comedy clubs when I first started. Yeah. It was all on the TV. Yeah? There was just all working men's clubs, and they would learn the hard way to go in and do it. Nowadays, with the emergence of so many comedy clubs or a night in any pub, there will be a gem of a comedian who you haven't seen, nobody's ever heard of, and you're, as I said before, you're there at the moment. And you can experience something and you think, my God, this is amazing. He's going to go far. I remember in the mid-90s, I had a friend in Manchester, a good friend in Manchester, and whatever I'd miss in London, I'd always go and see at the comedy with him in Manchester.
Yeah.
And we went to a club called the Jabez Clegg, and there was a bill of 5 acts on, and the fourth one on was Peter Kay. Nobody had ever heard of him.
Yeah.
And I laughed so hard at his 20 minutes. I missed the 5th act. I was still laughing. And I said to him, he's going to be a superstar. And look at the emergence of him. And 2 or 3 years down the line, I'd looked previously at the bill of the 5 acts, and I had to go up to Dave Gorman and apologise to him that I laughed right the way through his set. Because he was the 5th act. but
still laughing at the guy before. Sorry.
Yeah. but that is a magical thing to have witnessed, because you've got a comedian who doesn't think who is just doing his job, and then all of a sudden, this is the other big thing, they take off. They're now playing arenas and all the rest of it, and my view is that the comedians that do that are lucky to do that.
Yeah,
they still just walk on, do the set, and walk off again. It doesn't matter whether you're playing to 50 people or 50,000, But that's how it's gone, and I think it's such a rich comic life, really, because there are so many. There are some brilliant female comics. There's just so many. And I was interviewed on a previous thing, and I said, you know, if you're funny, you're funny. It doesn't matter what your background is or whatever. It's something anybody can have a go at, and realize that you could do something if you can do it well, or you know, whatever the reaction of the audience is, and everybody's happy, and you know, watch it take off, go as far as you can, or whatever. You know, so.
I go back to this a lot. When you were young and seeing comedians as a young boy, did you have any inkling that growing up in those earlier days that comedy would have the impact on your life that it's had?
No. I what I used to do was I am fascinated with theatre posters or film posters or everything. I used to cover my walls with acts or films or things like this in my bedroom. But I used to always enjoy going. I used to love to go to a variety show on a seaside holiday or whatever, and I'd always look at the posters, the end of the pier or whatever, you know, and all the 70s things. But I never realised it would be such an impact. No way. But I knew the list would have started somewhere. It was fairly late. I think probably when I first went to the Edinburgh Fringe 2005, and what I used to do was scan all the flyers through. I was that detailed, and keep them all on my computer. But I had a portable disk drive that lost everything. But the one thing it did keep was my spreadsheet. Thank God. So I had that, and then that's how the blog grew. So there's a lesson there learned where you have to back everything. So I've got it on iCloud, I've got it on with hard drive, I've got it on the computer in case it goes again.
Right, yeah.
Because it's now so valuable to me.
Of course,
you know, if what I do, how I go about writing it all on the blog, I write it all in Word first. So every actor's got a Word document. And of course, I've got all my photographs as well, because I do like photograph with the comedians.
Yeah.
And I've got over 1,000 of them now. So, you know, it is very precious to me. And originally, the whole thing was going to be a book. That was the idea. It was Rich Comic Life was going to be a book, and it still might be. But at the time, I couldn't afford the publishing costs because it was so big. So a friend of mine, as I said earlier on, my friend in Carlisle said, this is crying out for a blog. So, and of course, a blog is infinite, as I said. So, you know, you can do it forevermore.
Yeah. So, I know what you're saying. I remember many, many years ago, I think in Torquay.
Everybody goes there.
Torquay, yeah, everybody. It must have been late 70s, maybe early 80s. I saw Little and Large.
Oh, mate.
On stage.
One I've never seen.
I think it's the earliest one I can remember seeing.
Wow.
In honesty, I remember very little about it, but I remember how I felt about it. Seeing the people from the television.
Yeah.
Right there in front of me.
That's the magic, yeah. And
it felt huge because, of course, in your own home, you hear the family around you, around the television, watching and laughing as we all did. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly you're in a theatre full of people, and this is magic because everyone's feeling the same way I'm feeling.
Well, I'm going to give you an exclusive because, as I said earlier on, there is a section in my blog called The Ones That Got Away. And in those early days, I was very, very lucky to see Les Dawson, Tommy Cooper. During my time, I was in the audience for the last sketch show for the two Ronnies, last thing Ronnie Barker ever did. I was in the recording for that. And Ken Dodd was a massive favourite. The ones that I never ever saw, and they were the whole reason for the blog for me, were Morecambe and Wise. Yeah. I just thought they were outstanding, and like you say, I can remember watching them on TV with the whole family around me and everybody laughing. And it wasn't just Eric Morecambe, the magic of the double act and all the rest of it. I've got loads of books. I've seen loads of plays about them. And I've secured I hope, a recording of an interview with Gary Morecambe, the son of Eric.
Son, yeah.
So I'm hoping that that's going to take off. So there's your exclusive.
Wow, that'll be fantastic.
And that would be amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to that. And that's going to be probably the end of July. We're going to do that. So he's kindly agreed. I'm also after Les Dawson's wife to interview, who's kindly agreed. And that would be amazing as well. But we'll see. But they all seem to want to do it, as I say, which is incredible. Because who am I? I'm just for the audience.
You're the most famous non-comedian in comedy.
That's too much pressure.
You're right. I mean, Les Dawson, the greatest storyteller ever.
Oh, he's definitely top 5 for me, without a doubt.
Morecambe and Wise, I mean, of our generation, certainly, people of our age who didn't spend their Christmas with the family around the TV for the Morecambe and Wise Christmas special.
There's a famous quote from Dave Allen. He once said, whenever you think of Morecambe and Wise, you smile. And what more can be said? You know, they were just magical.
Yeah, Dave Allen, he's absolute hero of mine. I was very lucky to have seen him at the Strand in the 90s.
You're one up on me. I couldn't get into that gig, and he's in my ones that got away. I tell a lot of his jokes. That's another thing. When I go and see all the comedians, I can remember a lot of the jokes. So I'm very good at telling jokes in a pub, or I think I am. It's all about delivery.
It's funny because you were talking about seeing comedians and their acts evolve, and so it's interesting because Dave Allen, he evolved because he had the smoking and the drinking, and and then he gave up the cigarettes, he stopped, and then he gave up the drink, and he's talking about smoking, but then he's not talking about smoking. And one of the many reasons I like to go and see work in progress shows is I'll see an act do the same show 4, 5, 6 times because it's changed from the start of the year to by the time it gets to Edinburgh, it's a different show. Yeah. It's nice to see the evolution, you know. Yeah,
exactly. Last September, I saw Glenn Moore do a work in progress at the Camden Comedy Club, and he's doing Edinburgh. So the change of that show will be amazing. So I mean, if you analyse it, an hour show, they must have about at least 2 hours worth of material that they can try and then ditch, and it's all dependent on the laughs.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you know, if I'm there, laughter's guaranteed. It's only if I'm not such a fan, I never heckle or anything like that. I just sit in silence and grin. It still looks as though I'm enjoying it.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Glenn Moore because I was trying to think who's comparable to Les Dawson, even in a small way today. And I think Glenn Moore's a great storyteller. He's a narrative comedian. And it's just he just runs through the jokes.
Very, very much so. You can break them all down. You've got the nutters, what I like to call them, who are just wild.
Yeah.
You've got the storytellers. You've got the jokers, so the one-line merchants, and you've got the political comedy and the overall what's going on in the world sort of thing. And it's wonderful to watch them carve out that craft, and you watch them which path are they going to go down, and you know it's fascinating to see. I think I'm in the wrong job.
Never say never, you know. So Rich, then let me ask you finally, is it even possible? How can you summarize comedy in a nutshell?
I can only do it for me. It's given me an enormous amount of confidence and joy, and I hope I have given that back with my support of all these wonderful people who have the ability to get up and go and do it. I mean, anybody has, as I said before, but it's just the most joyous, positive thing. And it makes me feel amazing. And my mum always used to say, live for the day. And that's what I do, you know, and everybody, I've just secured a brand new job. They've said to me, I've slotted in really well. And, you know, you're very upbeat and you're very enthusiastic. And I think I get that from the comedy. It shapes character. You know, what is not to love about going to a comedy show and relating to what the person is saying on stage and laughing like a drain, or just even smiling or relating, or, you know, it's a wonderful thing. And I know that's why you do it as well, because we've chatted before about this, and I can genuinely talk to you all night about this. Many people say I'm boring.
No, not a bit of it. It's actually I could talk about comedy to anybody all day long, particularly you.
I was joking.
Then I'll conclude by saying thank you, Rich Gill, for being such a fantastic guest, for coming on and spending his time with me. It's been an absolute treat.
Thank you so much, and all the very best with your podcast. You go for it, my friend, and I will no doubt see you very, very soon. I'll see you next week at Hastings.
You will, for sure.
Definitely. All right, my friend. Well, you take care, and all the best to you.
And have a rich comic life.
Thank you.